Hello game fans, and welcome to another video from Gaming Debugged. Now, a few years ago I was lucky enough to interview Andy Green from Bossa Games, formerly Bossa Studios. After the interview, the memory card was lost and COVID meant that I couldn't go get it. I've now got the footage and I give you the interview with Andy Green at Bossa Games.
So maybe one of the prevailing things is like prototype it early, like prove that it's a game that people are going to want to play early. And that's one of the things we did with Worlds Adrift especially, was we enlisted the community help very early on because we knew we were doing something different, something hadn't been done before. Still, we're still one of the only people doing what we're doing, and we needed to know early on if people wanted it, and was it going to be fun? Maybe the second gameplay would be great, but is there a long term? And we knew the project was going to be costly. It was so ambitious to use a business term, early validation, basically, and prototype it, and it's actually give it to people. Is it fun? I mean, it's one thing to have an idea on paper, but at some point you need to be able to say, yes, this is fun. No, I mean, well, okay. Technically, yes, because at some point you have to put yourself forward and say to organisations like Bafta that I think we can win. I think we should be considered for this award. And obviously, you can look at player feedback to judge that, and you can look at the rest of the market as well and say, is anyone else doing this? It might not necessarily. I mean, Monster Mine, for example, wasn't. Monster Mine was our BAFTA winning one. And it wasn't necessarily a commercial success, although it did actually retain and it monetized well. But there was technical reasons, platform limitations, etc., etc. But we looked at it and is anyone else doing this on the platform? And it was the best online browser. And actually, it was a real-time competitive multiplayer PvP city defender on Facebook 7 years ago. And Clash of Clans obviously is the big one in that space now, but even they didn't do what we did, which I know. Obviously, the rest has been history. But so we did critically look at it and say, there's something special about this. There's something different, and there is a reason to be proud of. But there wasn't a moment we ever actually expected we would win a BAFTA for it. We thought we'd been a shot at going through the category, and we're just there's some competition. In ways I never really sort of expected. I joined Bossa as an animator. Very, very early on. And I thought I wanted to do animation. I'm going to be an animator in the games industry. And obviously the industry had different ideas. I mean, animation in games is still expensive. And it turns out as well, animation is, at the time with Monster Mine, it was about 1/3 of the job.
Oh, wow.
Because it's funny, you get good at the thing that you do, so you do the thing you do quick. And then it's what about everything else? And there was, at the very start, there was 7 of us. So it's what else do we do? The rest of the game still needs to happen. Still need the rest of the artwork. So I mucked in and did other things. And basically, as the needs of the studio grew, I sort of discovered that I actually had quite a liking for more technical aspects of things. And as the requirements grew, I stretched further and further, and eventually started learning programming and teaching myself more sort of harder skills. And one of the things which helped was we hired artists who were better at doing what I was employed to do originally. Now I'm a senior member of the team and a technical artist with it. But I'm not directly responsible for anyone at the company, but I've seen the company go through all phases, and I can quite definitively say what is Bossa, what isn't, and I'm confident in how we work internally. It depends on the project. I mean, for example, when Worlds Adrift started, I was still working on Iron Bread. And actually on Iron Bread, I was still doing more technical things, but I was also half of the art team on the project. It was a very small project. So when I came into Worlds Adrift, there was already a reasonable amount that had been set in stone, but we were also transitioning a lot of art into basically better ways of doing. So basically, I just started mucking in where it was most appropriate at the time. And then from then on, I was then involved with most of the decision-making process when art was involved. And obviously, we knew we need some sort of technical support. So as a technical artist, I have an appreciation of what an artist needs, but also what the programmers are going to need, or what the programmers are going to hate the least, as sometimes it is with art and integration. So I'm responsible for communicating to the programmers why something's important in their language, and similarly feeding that back to the artists in sort of oftentimes more understandable terms. not like we've got like machines talking to Luddites, but it's sometimes it can get a bit jargony. Sometimes it does start from pen and paper. Like you come up with if someone asks you to come up with a system, sometimes you've got to put that system down to paper first. Like just going in a straight line and being like, I'm going to start here and I'm going to try and end over there. Like you will make more mistakes along the way. You need to know where you're going and you need to have a rough plan of what you're doing.
Okay.
But yeah, a big part of being a technical artist is being reactive to what's needed. Like you probably won't know everything because you'll have probably never done what you're about to do before, but it's having the aptitude and the will to learn, to muck in, to figure it out. So technicalartists.org, I believe, they have a great forum. They also have a Slack channel, which is a great resource. There's a lot of amazing people on there. But one of the things you soon realise with technical artists, there's just so many different kinds. You'll get technical artists they'll be doing more rigging and animation tools. You'll get artists that'll be much more invested in shaders. You get artists which are more borderline programmers. So the description of what a technical artist is incredibly broad.
Yeah.
But it's important, I'd say, to at least know one programming language. Python's a good start because, for example, for VFX and for a lot of products like Maya, Houdini, I think Substance uses Python as well. But also having an understanding of what either Unreal or Unity. I mean, obviously, if you know CryEngine, then that helps as well. But being able to demonstrate you can use an engine, you understand how it works, you have an appreciation. You don't have to have a complete knowledge because that comes with time and experience. Demonstrate that you can code, you can learn to code. Once you know one language, the next language is a lot easier. And proof that you understand how to get something into a game engine and make it work well. Want to do it and enjoy the experimentation and enjoy the journey, because part of the job is saying, I don't know how to do that. I will figure it out though.
Yeah.
And if I can't figure it out, I will give you the next best thing.
Okay.
So actually, I think, also not being afraid of saying, I don't know. Never think that people just make shaders. No one just writes a shader. It's such an arcane language. I mean, if you think finding technical artists is difficult, try looking for graphics programmers. We know one, so we can confirm that they exist. He lives in Canada, but I'm still adamant that he's part of a council of 7 sort of elite wizards, and he's on timeshare with us. But no, shader writing is incredibly valuable, it's incredibly useful, but it's incredibly inaccessible as well. So I don't think people should go into it expecting that they're going to learn it and become disheartened when they don't. I think a good way into shader writing, and it's the way I sort of got into it, and I'm not claiming to be an expert, I'm definitely not, but it's using node-based shader tools. Unreal has great tools for that. Unity is getting there. And once you understand the logic of writing shaders, how lighting functions work, bits and pieces like that, then you can start experimenting. And after a while, once you become familiar enough with the logic, you can then take on the challenge of, okay, I'm going to learn these arcane languages, and I'm going to start trying to wrangle the graphics card directly. So another thing, which is quite challenging, is actually just communicating with artists, especially if you're more tool-centric as a technical artist. A big part of your role is producing tools for people, and your goal is to support the art team and to make their jobs easier and to make what they do faster and more efficient. But you can't go into it thinking, tool, use it. And if they say, but you just use it, you can't do that. And on the flip side as well, people have to be able to trust the tools as well. If they don't trust it, they won't use it. So you have to be able to communicate with people why it's important. You have to think sort of almost about ergonomics and UX. How are people going to use it? Almost get into people's heads and try and think of the best way to coerce people into doing what you want them to do. Oh goodness, I think that's very much going to depend upon where you actually end up. If you end up at a larger company, you're going to probably have very, very, very small say on how things go, but you're probably going to have a team around you. If you end up working with a small company, you're probably going to end up with quite a lot of responsibility very, very quickly, and you're going to need to hit the ground running fast. The game industry moves very fast. Technology moves very fast. I mean, when I studied, you textured by painting things in Photoshop. I mean, we have Substance Painter now, for example, which is a totally new paradigm of texture painting. And it's so much better, to the point where we get, I get graduates don't know that you texture in Photoshop. So things change. So be prepared that what you know might be out of date already, or the studio you're going to might do something differently. And that's fine. The thing is, you've got to be willing to, you're doing what you want to do. You want to make games. That's what, assuming you get into the games industry, but the same is true of, VFX animation. If you're doing what you want to do, change with it. As long as it's still the thing that you want to do, just you'll find a way to make it work.
You time travel back to your 18-year-old self for 2 minutes. What advice do you give your younger self?
Figure out what you want to do. Yeah, that sounds super vague, but I remember, to be fair, I half got this advice at the time, and I'm not unhappy with how things have gone, but as a general piece of advice, like when I created a portfolio, it wasn't apparent from my portfolio what I wanted to do. Like, was it film? Was it games? It was animation, but where was it going? What was I meant to be doing? And that makes it very difficult for recruiters and for members of teams at studios looking at your work, thinking that I don't know where to put this person. And it's like, be very, very clear on what you're good at and what you want to do, and concede that, you might enjoy level design, you might enjoy modeling, you might enjoy rigging. Some people might.
Some people.
But you need to be clear on the thing that you're doing first. And there's a good chance you might end up at your first job. I've been at Bossa 7 years. I've effectively changed my career almost entirely. I still do bits of animation, and what I do still has a lot of consideration for how animation and timing works. But I'm fundamentally, I'm not doing what I did at uni in the slightest. So yeah, like, do enough to get you in the door and be clear enough on the primary thing you want to study, and then the rest of it can come later.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. That's really good advice. Thank you. And if you guys have found this useful, then please give it a like, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back with another interview very soon.
Finish him!